Welcome in. My name is Tam, and you have entered the Enlightened Auntie perspective. Thank you so much for joining me today. We are going to be talking about stepping outside of your comfort zone. This is going to be a little bit more informal than my intro, only because this is like literally the second time that I'm recording this entire episode, because the first time I recorded it in the wrong format. I am into transparency, so I'm letting you know. Stepping outside of the box. I actually find myself in the same position that I was in about a year ago. So last year, and really it happened before then, because I want to say it took place, like the idea was sparked in 2020, like the end of 2020. Something told me, make an oracle deck. I had all these messages, these downloads that were coming to me, and just write them out on some paper. So I initially had them written in a notebook, and then I went and bought some blank cards and wrote them all out, gave myself a reading, and almost made myself cry, because damn. Did a whole bunch of research and looked for manufacturers. I mean, it was a really exhausting process, but I was excited just because I'm an artist. So, I was into it. But it was a big step for me to invest the money to purchase my initial decks that I was selling. And when they arrived, I was so geeked because I saw a vision in my head and had created it and then published it and then threw it up on my website, and people ordered it, and it was amazing. However, even though I did all of that and it was super exciting and everybody, whatever, people thought it was a big deal. And it was. But when the initial orders came in, and I apologize for those who got their decks really late, but it was a mess, because I was afraid. I became really, really freaked out about sending them. I had the orders coming in, and I was like, this is wonderful, it's wonderful. I had boxed them up, they were all packaged, they were, postage was slapped on them, everything was ready to go, and I held on to them for a minute, just because I was freaked out. At the same time, too, we were also going through like postage nightmares with the elections and everything. So just the mail, USPS was awful at the time. So there was a lot going on. And so when there were, decks had gone out, decks had gotten lost, people hadn't gotten them. And then I was actually kind of like okay with the ones that got lost, because I was like, whew. And that just means that just delays their judgment. The rationale. And really all of that fear that stems from not being able to move forward, it comes from your pride and ego. It comes from being consumed by fear of rejection or some type of ridicule or judgment. And that shit keeps you small. It'll keep you small. I would not have accomplished anything that I was able to do last year had I not done it scared. So even in this moment, I'm sitting here, chilling in the cave, and I got my little setup, and I may look like I know what I'm doing, and I'm nervous as hell. I'm nervous as hell when I have really no problems communicating. I really have no problem sharing my story or anything like that. But this is different. And so because it's different, It scares the hell out of me, but I'm doing it anyway because I realize the potential in my own growth just by stepping outside of my comfort zone. The fear that keeps you held back ultimately is self-sabotaging, because you will talk yourself out of something. I can tell you, I talked myself out of recording this several times. Like, in my mind, I woke up with the intent to sit down and record and to shoot my segments. And every single time I got ready to sit down and shoot them, I came up with a reason why I couldn't. Even after talking to people, even after talking to other people who are kind of like, I won't say cheering me on, because that's not really what it was. It was just like really giving me supportive nudges and just reminding me to just do what you do, you know? Even after that, it still took me another 24 hours to kind of get it together, because on the inside, I was still very much worried about how it would be received, how I would be perceived. Would anybody take me seriously? Would anybody really care about what I have to say? And I think most of that comes from just growing up feeling like my words never had any value. Nobody ever really gave a shit about what I had to say. So some of that I've carried forward, and I'm conscious of that. I'm aware of it. That's where it starts. You got to be aware of it. I'm aware of it. I'm aware that that one little thing is sitting in the back of my head telling me that, you know, maybe this ain't it, when I know full well that, you know, I'm talking to myself on a daily basis to my clients. I can do this without a problem. But this is different because I'm sharing essences of myself, my own story, my own experiences, to lead other people through their own issues and their own circumstances, so you can see that I was able to come through it and I'm okay. I'm still alive. I'm still here. I'm still good. I'm still thriving, right? The things that were thrown at me, the things that have been laid in front of me in my life that were meant to break me down or keep me small, no longer have power over me, which is allowing me to step outside of the comfort zone. When you get to the point where you are no longer worried about or concerned what people think or how they'll feel, the level of that freedom, I mean, this is a little different for me because I'm sitting down and I'm having like this one-on-one conversation with you, I feel. And I don't know how many eyes are going to see this. I have no idea how many people are going to watch. So part of me is a little bit nervous about exposing myself, but again, I believe in transparency. And so, you know, we're all on this collective, we're all on a journey. And granted, collective energy has us, and I can tell you this, just the story aside, for like the last month and a half, the vision that I've been kind of carrying around with me, it's been kind of in my mind's eye, is I'm like standing in a tunnel, and I'm looking down this tunnel. We're in a cave, it's like a cave, it's dark. And at the very end of the tunnel, you see the opening to this cave, right? But at the opening, there's this sand curtain that's just you know, like pouring water, like a sand waterfall, okay? You can't see through it, but you know that that's the direction that you need to go in. Collectively, we've all been in this energy of knowing the direction that we're going in because we've already committed to it. We already know what we're going to do. We know how we're going to, you know, we have a pretty good idea of how we're going to execute, whatever. But over the course of the last month, the vision has gotten a little bit clearer where we've been inching up in increments. So where before, when I first found myself in this tunnel, it was about a month and a half ago. Last week, we were about 3 feet from the tunnel opening when I look at when I can kind of see us in that space, I'm right there at the threshold. I'm like, I'm looking. I can almost stick my hand out and like stick my hand in that sand. I imagine by the time that this airs, because I kind of feel like this was the sand wall for me. I feel like by the time this airs, we would have been collectively, hopefully, have gone to the other side. And part of what is holding us back is fear of the unknown, not being really sure of what's on the other side, what it looks like, how it's going to affect us, how will we handle it. Like there's all these unknown factors, but the thing is that you know inherently that that's the direction that you need to go in. You know it. So be reminded that when you know in your heart and everything in your heart is telling you to do something, but it goes against everything that you would ever do. It's so out of the box. It's so different. Do it anyway. Like that's literally the reason. Do it anyway. I wouldn't have accomplished any of the things that I did last year if I hadn't done any of it scared. I tell people that all the time. In this time, I've published 4 Oracle decks and a tarot deck. Self-published, created it. I did the art. I sought out a manufacturer. I paid for cards to be made. I threw them up on a website and sold them. I would have never done any of that had I not done it scared. And I was terrified when I did it. I was terrified. Even now, I get nervous when people, there's no ego in it. When people buy stuff from me, I'm like, I have merchandise on my store and that's great. And it's all stuff that I've, created myself. When people buy it, I'm like, oh, that's cool. They like it too. That's how I'm not thinking of it from an ego perspective. Like, yeah, they're buying my stuff. I'm almost kind of nervous. Like, oh my God, they're buying my stuff. I hope that they like it. And then I start feeling all kind of crazy because I'm worried, are they going to like it? I go through it too. We all go through it. But again, I would have never did any of that stuff if I hadn't just done it scared. I was scared to death. I still published. I was scared to death sending this manufacturer all this money so that he can make all these decks and pray that they come out the way that I envisioned them. Like all of it was a huge risk, all of it. But I did it, and I did it on my own. I did it without asking for help, even though I probably could have used some help. It was something that I wanted to prove to myself. And most of all, I really feel like that's where the empowerment comes from. Proving it to yourself. Prove to yourself that you can handle the shit that's being thrown at you. And it's really about, people talk about Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde gets a really bad rap. For me, Mercury retrograde is really about taking a step back so that you can reevaluate and reassess what you're dealing with so that you can adjust your actions accordingly. I'm going to preach it all the time. You cannot control the situation or circumstances external to you. The only thing you have control over is you and how you feel and how you manage those feelings as they relate to what's happening to you outside, out in, from the external realm. External realm is anything outside of your body, right? You can't control other people. You can't control situations. And if you know that, and you know that none of that external stuff makes a difference, really, when you empower yourself to realize that nobody's judgment makes a difference anyway. It ain't nothing but projection. Don't let other people project their fear. And that's a thing. This is something that I recognized with people within my own circle, not close circle, but just folks that I know, is that people become very what's the word? I don't know. Maybe it's triggering. Folks get triggered when they see you living authentically, when you're doing things that nobody would ever do. Okay, and I could totally I could go on a rampage about Kanye. I have so many thoughts and ideas about the Kanye thing. Neither here nor there. When you stop focusing on what other people think and how other people will perceive you, you gain your power by building your confidence enough to say, you know what, fuck it, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. Because the thing is that you have to prove it to yourself. Who are you? We've been programmed, or at least I have at some degree, been programmed to jump through hoops for other people. And I always felt like when I was growing up that I wasn't doing enough or wasn't good enough. Or so because everything that I did was always met with, well, why'd you do that? Well, I wouldn't do it that way. I would do it this way. I wouldn't do it that way. Whatever my idea was, there was always a pushback. Well, if I was you, I would do it this way. I wouldn't do it that way. And for me, what that did was it prevented me from making a lot of moves that would go outside of that comfort zone, simply because every idea I ever had was met with challenge, was met by somebody telling me I couldn't do it, or why would you want to do that? The biggest flex for me was being able to prove to myself that I was able to accomplish these things on my own with nobody's help, because I'm not as stupid as you think I am. You know, prove to yourself that you can do it. Step outside of the box. Step outside of other people's smallness. They want to keep you small. People will talk down on your ideas and shit on them and make you feel like you're crazy for even wanting to pursue them, just because they don't have the balls to do it themselves. Remember that, because that will be a thing. That may be a thing in your life right now, where you're making moves and the people around you are pissed off at the moves that you're making because you are leaving them behind. Oh well. Oh well, right? All right, I'm gonna wrap it up here. It's really about not keeping yourself small. Step outside of the comfort zone. Step outside of yourself. When you're able to do that, you gain so much more power. You gain so much more power. Live for yourself, not for other people, not for the praise, not for, the glory. Find what makes you happy and go for it and live it to the fullest if that's what you want. Who's to say it's wrong, right? All right, guys, I love you so much. I can't wait to chat with you next time. We're going to talk about walls versus boundaries. Remember to be the best you that you can be. See yourself the way that I see you. I love you guys. Till next time.